a WikiVidi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Hereditary, film. Hereditary is a 2018 American supernatural horror film written and directed by Ari Aster, in his feature directorial debut. It stars Toni Collette, Alex Wolff, Millie Shapiro, and Gabriel Byrne as a family haunted after the death of their secretive grandmother. Hereditary premiered on January 21, 2018, in the midnight section at the 2018 Sundance Film Festival, and was theatrically released in the United States on June 8, 2018. It was acclaimed by critics, with Colette's performance receiving particular praise, and was a commercial success, making over $79 million on a $10 million budget to become A24's highest-grossing film worldwide. Plot: artist Annie Graham lives with her husband, Steve, their 16-year-old son Peter, and their 13-year-old daughter, Charlie. At the funeral of her secretive mother, Ellen, Annie delivers a eulogy explaining their fraught relationship. Steve is informed that Ellen's grave has been desecrated, while Annie thinks she sees an apparition of Ellen in her workshop. At a support group for bereaved, Annie reveals that the rest of her family suffered from mental illness that resulted in their deaths. To attend a party, Peter lies that he is going to a school event, and Annie forces him to take Charlie with him. Unsupervised, Charlie eats cake containing nuts, which she is allergic to, and falls into anaphylactic shock. As Peter drives her to a hospital, Charlie leans out of the window for air. Peter swerves to avoid a dead animal, and Charlie is decapitated by a telephone pole. The family grieves following Charlie's funeral, heightening tensions between Annie and Peter. Peter is plagued by Charlie's presence around the house. Annie is befriended by a support group member, Joan. Annie tells her she used to sleepwalk, and recounts an incident in which she woke up in Peter's bedroom to find herself, Peter, and Charlie covered in paint thinner with a lit match in her hand. Joan teaches Annie to perform a seance to communicate with Charlie. Annie wakes from a nightmare and convinces her family to attempt the seance. Objects begin to move and break, terrifying Peter, and Charlie seemingly possesses Annie until Steve douses her with water. Annie suspects that Charlie's spirit has become malevolent. She throws Charlie's sketchbook into the fireplace, but her sleeve also begins to burn. She retrieves it and heads to Joan's apartment for advice, but Joan has vanished. Annie notices that Joan's welcome mat resembles her mother's craftwork. She goes through her mother's possessions and finds a photo album linking Joan to Ellen, and a book with information about a demon named Paimon, who wishes to inhabit the body of a male host. In the attic, Annie finds Ellen's decapitated body with strange symbols on the wall written in blood. At school, Peter becomes confused and slams his head against his desk, breaking his nose. Annie shows Steve her mother's body in the sketchbook. Annie begs Steve to burn the sketchbook so she can sacrifice herself to stop the haunting, but Steve assumes she has gone mad, accusing her of desecrating Ellen's grave herself. When Annie throws the book into the fireplace, Steve bursts into flames instead. Annie becomes possessed. Peter awakens to find his father's body. Annie chases him into the attic, which is decorated with cult imagery. Levitating, Annie beheads herself with a piano wire as naked coven members look on. Peter jumps out of the window. As he lies on the ground, a light enters his body and he wakes up. He follows Annie's levitating corpse into Charlie's treehouse, where Charlie's crowned, decapitated head rests atop a mannequin. Joan, other coven members, and the headless corpses of his mother and grandmother bow to him. Joan swears an oath to him as Paimon, stating that he has been liberated from his female host, Charlie, and is free to rule over them. Production. During pre-production, writer-director Ari Aster often referred to the film not as a horror film, but rather, a tragedy that curdles into a nightmare. Films said to have influenced Aster in the making of Hereditary include Rosemary's Baby, Cries and Whispers, Don't Look Now, Carrie, Ordinary People, and The Cook, The Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. Aster also noted that much of his inspiration for the film came from older Japanese horror films. The film began shooting in February 2017 in Utah. The exteriors of the Graham family house, and The Treehouse were shot in Salt Lake City, and the school scenes were shot in West High School. But all other interiors were built from scratch on a soundstage, since each of the rooms was built on a stage. Walls could be removed to shoot scenes at a much greater distance than a practical location would allow, creating the dollhouse aesthetic of the film. Release. Hereditary premiered at the Sundance Film Festival on January 21, 2018. The trailer for the film was released on January 30, 2018, on Anzac Day in 2018. The trailer for Hereditary played before the PG-rated family film Peter Rabbit in a cinema in Innaloo, Western Australia. According to a report in the Sydney Morning Herald, the Hereditary preview was accidentally shown to family audiences and created a small panic in the theatre. The theatre was apparently full of families including at least 40 children. The film was released in the United States by A24 on June 8, 2018. It was released in the United Kingdom by Entertainment Film Distributors on June 15, 2018. Box office. Hereditary has grossed $44 million in the United States and Canada, and $35.3 million in other countries, for a total worldwide gross of $79.3 million, against a production budget of $10 million. In the United States and Canada, Hereditary was released alongside Ocean's 8 and Hotel Artemis, and was originally projected to gross $5.9 million in its opening weekend, similar to the debuts of previous A24 horror films The Witch and It Comes at Night. It was also the widest ever release for an A24 film with 2,964 theaters, besting the 2,553 of It Comes at Night. After making $5.2 million on its first day, including $1.3 million from Thursday night previews, weekend estimates were increased to $12 million. It went on to debut to $13.6 million, finishing fourth at the box office, behind Ocean's 8, Solo, A Star Wars Story, and Deadpool 2, and marking the best ever opening for an A24 title. In its second weekend the film dropped just 48% to $7 million, finishing sixth. By July 29, 2018 the film had grossed $79 million worldwide, passing Lady Bird to become A24's highest-grossing film worldwide. Critical response. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 89% based on 284 reviews, and an average rating of 8.2. The website's critical consensus reads, Hereditary uses its classic setup as the framework for a harrowing, uncommonly unsettling horror film whose cold touch lingers long beyond the closing credits. On Metacritic, which assigns a normalized rating to reviews, the film has a weighted average score of 87 out of 100, based on 49 critics, indicating universal acclaim. Writing for Rolling Stone, Peter Travers gave the film 3.5 out of 4 stars and called it the scariest movie of 2018, saying, "It's Collette, giving the performance of her career, who takes us inside Annie's breakdown in flesh and spirit, and shatters what's left of our nerves. Her tour de force bristles with provocations that for sure will keep you up nights. But first you'll scream your bloody head off." For the AV Club, A.A. Dowd gave the film an A-, stating that, in its seriousness and hair-raising craftsmanship, Hereditary belongs to a proud genre lineage, a legacy that stretches back to the towering touchstones of American horror, unholy prestige zeitgeist classics like The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby. Remarkably, it's a first feature, the auspicious debut of writer-director Ari Aster, whose acclaimed, disturbing short films were all leading, like a tunnel into the underworld, to this bleak vision. Common Sense Media gave the film 4 out of 5 stars and advised that it was suitable for viewers aged 17 or older. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of D on an A to F scale. Some publications noted the critics-to-audience discrepancy, comparing it to Drive, The Witch and It Comes at Night, all of which were critically acclaimed, but failed to impress mainstream moviegoers. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?